This is ZYTO example video number 3. If you haven't already, you may want to check out the first introductory video, which tells more about how I use ZYTO, what I think ZYTO is good for, what I found it to help us with over the 4 years that our family has been using it. This video is just another example of how I interpret and go through a ZYTO scan. So this scan is from April 2014. It is my personal scan, and it was done after my big cavitation surgery, which I had on tax day, April 15th of 2014. I had number 1, 16, 17, and 32. All 4 of my wisdom teeth sockets opened up, cleaned out, and sewed back together. They'd been infected, all 4 of them, for 25 years, had been causing no obvious symptoms, but my body clearly has done better without those infections. I can definitely tell a difference now, although I commend my body and my immune system for taking care of those infections for me for so many years, where I was going to school and working and, and doing all kinds of things as if there was nothing there. So anyway, back to ZYTO. This was taken a couple weeks after my cavitation surgery. Unfortunately, that practitioner did not use ozone, and I ended up septic with number 16 and 17, the whole left side of my face, my sinus, my ear, losing my vision as well. The whole thing was going septic. So I pulled out this ZYTO scan because it was done right after the cavitation surgery, right in the thick of my septic infection, and so it's interesting with that context to see what comes up on ZYTO. So let me just dive right in. I'm looking here at the left hand initial column, and I'm looking for numbers that are high, either absolute value high, so either positive or negative, it doesn't matter. I'm just looking for large numbers. And the first one I see is 34.97 trichophyton. I have no idea what that is. Sounds like phyton, sounds like some kind of bacteria or plankton, kind of sounds like that. I don't know what it is. I'd have to Google it. It almost doesn't matter, but some kind of something that's probably not supposed to be there. I want to note here that 34.97 seems like a low number maybe compared to the other scans I've been talking about and using as an example. But these scans are all relative, so every time I walk in for ZYTO, the practitioner recalibrates the machine, and so the numbers are only relative to the other numbers on this piece of paper. They're not relative to the numbers I may have had last month or that my child maybe had on the same date, because they recalibrate for each individual person. So in the realm of this piece of paper, 34.97 is a high number. That's acute. I see also here 21.58 penicillium is a bacterium, 28.83 TCM acupuncture points. That one is very interesting because all 4 of these teeth are on acupuncture meridians, and it makes sense that my acupuncture meridians might be off. Given that I've got to imagine me with a really swollen face, and these 2 are trying to heal and these 2 are still infected. So that's what I was going through at the time, so it kind of makes sense that my acupuncture meridians would be off. 27.86 pneumococcal pneumonia. That's interesting. I don't freak out about this. We're exposed to pneumonia all the time. Our immune system usually takes care of it, and hopefully takes care of it. I've had pneumonia come up for me and my children before, and I just don't worry about it, and I just thank my immune system for fighting whatever's coming through here. Is ZYTO right? Is it wrong? We don't really know. In hindsight of working with it for 4 years with 4 people, I think ZYTO is most of the time somewhat accurate. It may not be exactly pneumonia. It may be something similar to pneumonia, maybe a mutated strain of it that's picking up here and then resonating with the pneumonia. I can't really say for sure, but I can say that in hindsight, ZYTO more often than not is right, whether I understand it or not. That's just my personal opinion. Okay, so keeping going down the list here, Clostridium is a dysbiotic bacteria, minus 18, so I've had that one for a while. It's chronic. If it's a negative number, it's chronic. Minus 22.81 cell structures. That kind of makes sense because I'm going through some healing in my dental at that time. 28.31 acute trichophyton. So again, back to this trichophyton that we had before. So that might be worth Googling now since it's come up a couple of times. 23.29 microtoxins. Microtoxins make sense because anytime you have a bacterial infection or a virus or something that's coming out, tends to create mycotoxins. So that one makes sense. 20.78 agrobacterium bacteria. 18 acute claviceps makes sense as well. Minus 14.96 joint connective tissues. So that also kind of makes sense in the context of just having dental surgery. Going on to page 2 here, 31.25 bacteroides dystasonis, bacterial infection. Again, kind of makes sense. The question I have to ask at this point is what's in those cavitations when they open them up? What's in there? And I think the answer is all kinds of viruses and bacteria and spirochetes and things that just get loose. We don't really know, but it's interesting to see what comes up here on ZYTO right after my dental surgery. Going down for high numbers here, minus 22.89 teeth. Now that one to me is very interesting because I hadn't seen teeth really coming up for me before this major surgery. So again, I'm just recovering from this major surgery and finally we see teeth coming up. So again, ZYTO is not good at diagnosing dental infections. It's not, those infections have been there for a long time and I've not seen teeth come up until we actually physically opened those up and made major surgery in there. Then I'm finally seeing the teeth come up on ZYTO. So kind of interesting. Let's see, minus 15 penicillin, minus 18.57 legionella, penicillin, Clostridium coming up again, pneumocystis, so again back to the pneumonia, Bacillus coli, so bacteria, Candida, interesting, 18, so acute Candida coming through, 14.19 vitamin C deficiency. That one is interesting because right after the dental surgery I went and got a vitamin C IV. So it's interesting that my body's saying we could use even more vitamin C. We're really trying to fight this septic infection. So overall what I'm seeing here is lots of bacteria, some Candida, pneumonia, penicillin, all kinds of things that could have potentially been in my cavitations that my body's now trying to detox after this big surgery. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the balancers here and see, just as interesting as what's scanning as being a problem for me, I'm curious to see what comes up as being beneficial. And the higher the number in the balancer, the more beneficial it is, the more it's going to help me with these particular issues that we've scanned for. And the more negative that balancer is coming up, the less beneficial it's going to be for me. So 42.75 Byron White formulas, that's interesting because it's a drainage homeopathic remedy, mostly used for Lyme disease. Interestingly, my body's saying, help me drain out all these infections. Lyme isn't necessarily coming up here. In fact, I don't really see any Lyme or co-infections here. But, those drainage remedies can be good for other bacterial things too. So that's kind of what this is telling me. ADP is oil of oregano, usually used for mold and fungus. So my body's saying it wants that. So I did do the Byron White, I did do the ADP at that time. The Woodland Essence CSA formula, that is a formula commonly used for Lyme or more Babesia, co-infection of Lyme. I did do that as well because I know that, even though Lyme didn't show up on this scan, there could have been Lyme in there as well, and CSA is an herbal formula that may work on some of these other pneumonia and other bacteria as well. So I did go on that. Lymph Tone 2 is a drainage remedy to help the lymph, support the lymph system. So that's always good when you're fighting infection, to make sure that things are moving out. And then the next 4 things here are Nutramedix products, Mora, Cemento, Banderol, Cumenda, all around the number 6 on ZYTO. Interestingly, they're all antimicrobials except for Cemento. Cemento is an immune system booster. So my body's kind of saying, help me out with some of these bacteria with some antimicrobials and help me boost the immune system with the Cemento. CSA could also, the Woodland Essence CSA could also be considered an antimicrobial. So my body's saying, help me drain, help me boost my own immune system, and help me fight these bacteria, which kind of makes sense right after a cavitation surgery when you're septic, that your body says, help me drain this out, help me keep things moving, and help me with some of these infections. So that all kind of made sense to me. I did go on all of that. In addition, I usually pick the top 2 or 3 drainage remedies to go on, and I did do the Byron White, I did do the lymph. Those are 2 drainage remedies. And coming up, the next one here, coming up on under the drainage category, is this gallbladder ND. I don't remember that I did that. I don't think I did that one. I just did the top 2 there in that case. The next thing I do is I turn to the last page and look at the most negative things coming up here. I see. So the most negative numbers here, tinidazole and mebendazole, so 2 parasite medications, -12, -10. That kind of makes sense. You know, my body's fighting a septic infection. It doesn't really want parasite medications at that time. It's fighting enough, so that somewhat makes sense to me. If you notice, after the -12, there's a bunch of positive numbers again. These are a bunch of things that my practitioner was helping in her database and searching in her database for what might help me. So these were some things that she was trying out, and she imprinted the bacteroides and the pneumococcal treatment, and some of these Clostridium and some of these things. She actually imprinted them for me into a bracelet, into a treatment to help my body deal with those. So she did do that. Her things here are kind of at the end. Usually they're at the beginning, but in this scan she put them at the end. And the previous things are all things that are in my personal database, and what I have in my garage, and I usually run those every time I go to ZYTO. So anyway, she gave me a treatment for those, and she recommended, you can see, order a home ozonator. So she recommended this O3 Pure ozonator back at that time. I did actually order it. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a good idea, especially if you have dental infections or anything going on. You can at least swish with the ozone in your mouth if you have infections or just underwent any kind of dental treatment. I think it's a good idea. And it's also it's known as a fruit and vegetable washer. I think that's also a good idea, especially if you're going through some health issues. You don't want to be exposed to additional parasites or additional bacteria, so it's good to wash raw fruits and vegetables with that. So that was back when I got first got my O3 ozonator. The next thing I do with the ZYTO scan is I take my current list of supplements and I search for them on here, and if they're still testing, in this case at sort of positive 5 or above, given these numbers that we have here, which are, you know, relatively low. If it's 5 or above, I tend to keep it on the supplements list. If it's between 5 and -5, I kind of debate in my head whether I think it's needed or not still. And if it's below kind of -5 and it's on my supplements list, I'll kick it off. So in this case, I added some of these things, the Byron White, the ADP, the Woodland Essence, the Lymph, and all these Cowden up to 5.68. I added those to my supplements list. And anything that was below -5, I deleted. I don't think at that time, I wasn't on any of those things anyway, so there was nothing for me to delete. So this was just another example of how I use ZYTO and how I interpret the results. Again, in this case, I had just done my dental surgery, my big cavitation surgery, and ZYTO didn't help me diagnose that. It didn't help me through the surgery, but it did help me afterwards drain some of these bacteria out, make sure my systems were all working, like it caught this lymph too, and some of these other things that I think can't prove 100%, but I think helped me get through that infection.